Greetings, friends, and welcome. Hope everybody had a good weekend. As predicted, a few things occurred while we were off here Saturday and Sunday. We'll get to it all. I think perhaps one of the most misunderstood stories is the Hungary election, and of course, the talks in Iran that floundered earlier yesterday. We'll get to it all in due course. sam@whatsrightshow.com. That is my email with questions, comments, concerns. Please do reach out to me. I read each and every email personally, so I try to respond when I can, but I do see your emails and I do read them. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Find me there with up-to-the-minute commentary on things shaking out. Now, Orban, Viktor Orban, a friend of Trump's, an anti-globalist, longtime leader of Hungary, defeated yesterday pretty resoundingly by a former ally. Now, let me tell you exactly and boil this down exactly why this happened. All you have to do is look at the growth numbers or lack of growth numbers in Hungary and relative to other countries, this is absolutely critical to get. You've got, our own growth numbers. Let's say let's look at last year, 2025 growth. All right, so in the United States, 2025, we're projected somewhere around 2.1%. All right. That's, steady and solid. It's growth. The Czech Republic, I like to throw this in there because this is a neighbor of Hungary. This is a country that, I visit and I spend some time in. Parents were born and raised there. They have a pretty solid 2025 number, slightly ahead of ours, 2.3 to 2.6%. Hungary, a couple years ago, Hungary had negative growth. Their economy actually shrank. And then when you look at where it was, how it was doing last year, 0.3 to 0.4% growth. That's nothing. And if you look at other key, metrics, GDP per capita, look, the U.S., we're what is it, 90, almost 90,000, per capita. The Czech Republic, 35,000, somewhere around there. Hungary, 25,000. All right. So I'm letting you know that the problem with Orban was that he was right on immigration, but he was a hog. All right. This guy, one thing is, the perception in Hungary was that only if you were part of Orban's inner circle, only if you had political connections, could you score big contracts, could you make it ahead. And that clearly was off-putting to people. So after well over a decade in office, him and his party are out. The new party that came in, and this is where a lot of the pontificators are getting it all wrong, because I'm scrolling through following the election results yesterday, Robbie, and I see that Alex Soros is excited about Orban's loss. And he's welcoming the new leader of Hungary is going to be a guy named Peter Magyar, or Magyar. By the way, Magyar means Hungarian. Because literally his last name means Peter the Hungarian. Fun fact. Anyway, he's going to be making it sound like he's going to be some globalist Soros toady. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be true. I don't think the Hungarians want that. And I think that if this government ends up coming into power and getting too close to the EU, they'll be out. Remember this, and it's a cautionary tale for us going into the midterms. There are, like in Virginia, we have an opposition party here in the U.S. They're called the Democrats. At the federal level, they're pretty out of power. I mean, all they have is Judge Boasberg over there in Washington, D.C. with his ridiculous edicts. All right? The Democrats are on the outs. And they're getting ready for the midterms. They're getting excited. And what's their pitch? Because by and large, the Democrats are pretending to be very moderate. They're pretending to be this, counterbalance, counterweight to Trump. And people bought into it. And I talk about Virginia because Spanberger, when she ran for office against Winsome Sears, she ran as a moderate. And then everybody now is surprised that Democrats won big in Virginia. A bunch of angry Republicans mad at Trump. Trump stayed at home. And, of course, Democrat voters went out en masse, fired up by the No Kings rallies. No Kings! And what are they doing? Now, taxes are going up. A bunch of people that live in Virginia are freaking out. Companies now contemplating moving. It's a mess. And it could happen, right? And my takeaway from this is, for the opposition to our view, right, to conservatism, for the opposition to win, they still have to pretend to be moderate. Only in New York does a guy like Mamdani, win, right? I'm running as a democratic socialist. I believe communism is good. We're going to do the warm embrace, the comforting embrace of collectivism. Herder, right? But that works in New York. In globally, well, certainly nationally here in the U.S., national elections, I don't think it plays. So beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. That's the takeaway. That's my sense of it. Now, there's so many bad takes. That's the problem. There's so many bad takes. Now let's talk about Iran. This is important because I had a friend conversation yesterday. Somebody I respect, very smart guy, Republican, absolutely conservative, maybe not like the biggest Trump guy, but a committed, honest to goodness, anti-communist Republican. And he is freaking out about the Middle East. There's this panic, and I don't have it. I don't have it. But it was an interesting conversation. And some of you, and I know this from the emails that I'm getting, some of you feel the same way. So let me tell you, the concern, of course, is that we don't have leverage anymore. That was one of the things that he brought up. We don't have leverage. And we had, of course, Witkoff, we had Kushner, and of course, led by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, traveled to Pakistan and met the delegation of PhDs. The 6 or 7 folks over there sent by Iran were all PhDs. And the internet and cable news melted down over this. We're sending a VC guy. We're sending a real estate developer. And we're sending a lawyer to go up against 7 PhDs. This is not going to be good. By the way, my response to this is I'm not certain that you all have experience with PhDs. Now, I love this. My parents, both of them have PhDs, so I'm not trying to be belittling here, Robbie. I'm just saying that a lot of PhDs I know are not profoundly versed in the practicalities of life. So this was not some own that the people posting about this thought it was. The astounding thing here, sort of at the high level, of course, is that the left now identifies with Iran. They were shouldn't be a surprise. They identified with Hamas, for Pete's sake. They identify with Hezbollah. They'll root basically for anybody if it means getting at Trump or having Trump be defeated. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So the U.S. delegation goes to Pakistan and delivers an ultimatum. Now, Cenk Uyghur screamed about this, Robbie. He was screaming. He saw what the details were of the ultimatum when it leaked out after the whole party was over. and his assessment was, this is a non-starter. This is maximalist. Who do we think we are? And I'm looking at this and I'm going, you know what? You know when I begin to worry, and this is my answer to my buddy that I talked to, I begin to worry when the people on our side, AKA the top dogs in the US government, the US, right? The leader of the free world, Big Daddy. I get worried when the people that we send are weak, when they project weakness. I get worried when our people, okay, go and negotiate with the Iranians, whether they've got PhDs or not, okay, and act like they have to reach a deal. The idea that you have to reach a deal is broken thinking. If you go into a negotiation with somebody that must reach a deal, then that person is going to lose. If you go into a negotiation and you have to walk out with something and the other side knows it, you're dead. And my assessment, and I haven't seen this anywhere, but this is my take. I'm not saying it's what happened, but my sense is that the problem with those 8 PhDs or however many they had there is that the Iranians are all reading the New York Times. And the New York Times had the Iranians believing that Vance had to come home with something, that it was politically unsustainable for Trump, that Trump was over a barrel politically, right? And he had to come home with the deal. Otherwise, kind of end of show, and it would be bad news for the administration back home. And to their great surprise, J.D. Vance, much to the consternation of people like Cenk Uygur, went over to Pakistan and did what? He laid down these ultimatums. The Iranian says, no. Okay. And Vance goes, okay, well, we're, folks, we're done here. See you later, alligator. And Trump wakes up on Sunday morning and fires off the mother of all Truth Social posts. I was going to say X posts. He puts it on Truth Social, folks. By the way, he has to do this because he's got big ownership in Truth Social, and Truth Social essentially, I think, primarily exists because Trump is on it. So, I mean, that's what it is. I'm just telling you, that's what it is. And what is it? He goes, we're going to basically nuke what's left of, not nuke, but we're going to destroy what's left of the Iranian Navy. We're going to blow through the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to clear it. And any ship that is paid tribute to the Iranian pirates, because that's what this is basically, is toast. And this, I don't know, is anybody surprised by this? We don't pay pirate tribute. We fought a war about 200 years ago. Look it up. The Barbary Pirates, we was done with it. And Joel Pollack wrote this. I love it. He wrote this exactly yesterday. The reason America has a Navy is to prevent a rogue state or a group of, miscreants to decide that they're going to interfere with global trade. This is what we do. Jeez Louise. So this, again, I still don't necessarily see what the pause was about, but I told you here on this program that the war is not over. When the ceasefire was announced. Don't get too comfortable. Now back to being worried, back to being concerned, back to the uneasy feeling that many people who even support Trump and are Republicans and are generally in favor of the president and his actions, why they're just so nervous right now. It's not because they're listening to Alex Jones and to Tucker Carlson. It's because this is there's a certain fear, right, that this is going to all go sideways. My response to this is, do you feel more uncertain now, today, than you did on Friday? And this is the question I had for my friend, and he said about the same. That was his answer. And the reason I asked that is I would feel much worse if J.D. Vance had accepted whatever the Iranians, if J.D. Vance had walked away from that negotiation with a quote unquote deal, I really truly would believe that America gave something big up. Honest to goodness. Because that's how people from that part of the world haggle, okay? The the Iranians are not going to go there and give up the ghost. It means that we didn't lose any leverage. And the more leverage that the US has, the safer the entire planet is. Okay, I just want some of these critics to step outside of their TDS, dementia that they have. These people are actually, well, look at Tom Friedman was on, what was this, on CNN? Tom Friedman writes for the New York Times, that rag. He tries to couch this, okay? This is over the weekend. He tries to couch it, but essentially he comes out flat out saying, I really don't want Iran to lose too badly because that's a win for Trump and Netanyahu. These people's brains are broken. Listen to this.
Yeah, I find myself, Michael, in a situation where I really want to see Iran defeated militarily, because this regime is a terrible regime for its people in the region, and nothing would improve the region more than the replacement of this regime with a regime in Iran that was focused on enabling its people to realize their full potential and integrating peacefully with other countries and stop occupying Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. So I'm all for that. The problem is I really don't want to see Bibi Netanyahu or Donald Trump politically strengthened by this war, because they are two awful human beings. They're both engaged in anti-democratic projects in their own countries. They're both alleged crooks. They are terrible, terrible people doing terrible things to America's standing in the world and Israel's standing in the world. And so I really find myself torn. I want to see Iran militarily defeated, but I do not want to see these two terrible people strengthened.
Is this something or what? The problem is after qualifying what was clearly the thrust of his main argument, which is, I don't want to see Iran actually win if it is a political benefit to Trump and to Netanyahu. You could, after going through terrible, calls Iran a terrible regime, says that its replacement would be good for the people of Iran to realize their full potential, but he can't root for it. And that's what this is what we're up against. And what my urging is to those of you who still know right from wrong, who still support Trump, who understand that we're engaged in a global war for American dominance, who understands that if we don't claim this dominant position, some really bad actors, i.e. China, will, that there's a lot of moving pieces here that are frightening, that extend beyond our borders. And that when we bicker amongst ourselves about this, when we allow these people on the outside to erode our resolve, we're letting the opposition win here. And this is a guy who's writing multiple articles, who is influencing millions of Americans, and who's, frankly, I'll tell you this, the PhDs in Iran are reading his stories and went into this negotiation, kind of bad for them, right? Went into this negotiation thinking that America had to have a deal. So, that's the gist of it, right? By the way, John, I'll get to that later. Kerry, why doesn't Kerry just shut up? John Kerry, what a loser. By the way, if America had been unlucky enough to have had him as president elected in 2004, that would have been something else. All right, folks, a quick break here, just a moment, quick pause, and be back in a moment. Sam@what'srightshow.com is my email. Of course, that's where you reach me. Questions, comments, concerns, @what'srightsam on X. Be right back. Don't go anywhere.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Everyone's been talking about these ghost cars in Las Vegas. Have you heard about this? Ghost cars. Yeah, cars driving around without license plates. I waded into this debate online over the weekend and actually had somebody call me a Karen. They called me a Karen. So, see, you're not a conservative, Sam. You, well, because I want to see cars that don't have license plates, which means they probably don't have registration, which means they probably don't have insurance. I want to see them taken off the road because these drivers out there driving, hitting people, causing mayhem with zero possibility of accountability. I don't like that. Sam Rajovsky here, by the way, behind the What's Right microphone, the What's Right Media Network, coming to you here loud and clear from downtown Las Vegas. So I waded into this debate. It's getting national attention. Our city, right here, talking about it across the country. And I see it. I see these cars, and they're always, as a general rule, a car without a license plate, they're driving like a-holes. Okay, so they're cutting across lanes, whatever, and they get into accidents. And this is one of the challenges out there, right? You get into an accident, you think, all right, I'm gonna handle this. My insurance company's gonna handle it on my behalf. I don't need a lawyer. I don't need help. I don't have time for that. Just kind of avoid it because you got other things going on, right? Work is busy, life is busy, kids keeping you busy. I get it. Don't make that mistake, though. Take 10 minutes, 15. Quick phone call to Sam and Ash Injury Law, 800-304-2000. That's the number. And it's easy. A quick phone call, go over what you need, paperwork sent electronically can go over the phone. Easy. And then we begin working on the case immediately. No delay. And all the communication that you'd have to do, all the paperwork you'd have to send, we do it. Sam and Ash Law does it on your behalf. And at the end, you get a lot more money, all right? Even after attorney's fees, okay? You get more money, and you hadn't have to worry about any of it, right? Peace of mind. samandashlaw.com. No recovery, no fee, no money up front. Doesn't cost you anything out of your pocket. All upside. Sam and Ash, because you deserve what's right. So another story here. I quickly want to mention this because it kind of blew out in the open last week. And now a bunch of people online are talking about it. Saying there's a different angle. Phil's Coffee? They started in San Francisco, and it's a family-owned business, but they took on a lot of investment capital, and now they've sold. They sold out to a private equity group. They were purchased. The group owns other restaurants as well. And the new group, this is why they're in the news. The new group said, enough with the pride flags. Take down the pride flags. We're just going to serve coffee, okay? And everybody is up in arms. Well, of course, San Francisco, everybody's freaking out. And, okay, there's 60 locations of this, all right? But most of them are up in the Bay Area. Okay, the firm that bought them owns Popeyes and El Pollo Loco. The thing about private equity is they don't want to get into culture stuff, right? They just want to make money. But here was the interesting thing about this, okay? And I saw this, I think it was Cernovich. Somebody out there basically said, a conservative said, oh, the real story is that they wiped out the stock that was held by the employees. And I looked at this a little bit, and this is not the real story, actually. I guess I looked at it. There's about 10 former employees that had personally bought and held shares. Okay. 10. There's a whole bunch of employees that had stock options but never exercised them. What is a stock option? It means you have the possibility of buying stock in the company, but you choose not to. Well, if it gets bought out, then that all goes away. There's a new ownership structure, right? You're actually at that moment not an owner in the business, literally, because you didn't buy into the business. But the problem with the other money, with the 10 employees that did have stock, is that this business, and they would have been advised of this, the business took on multiple rounds of financing, of private funding. And every time that you take on private funding, you sign a agreement when you take the funds that fund has first priority, has like first rights to get paid at the end. And I don't know what I think they sold, I think for 145 million or something like that. It sounds like a big number, but they were really deep in debt and they had to satisfy all that debt. So the shareholders get wiped out. But that's a function of the business being poorly run, and the people that bought into it probably shouldn't have. And I think the fact that only 10 employees exercised those options means that everybody saw that, what the writing was on the wall. So this is just, the populism sometimes on our side, stick it to the man. I mean, see me. I think that companies that get bought out by these equity groups end up being a much poorer version of themselves. The product stagnates or gets worse, and the cost goes way up. I mean, it's just the way it works, but this was kind of a misrepresentation. So I wanted to mention that briefly. Mentioned John Kerry here before the break. John Kerry, who could have been president of the United States himself, he still hasn't recovered from the indignation of being swift-boated by Karl Rove, continues to pop up and talk, and he was an emissary of Obama's dealing with Iran. And that's why the Obama deal sucks donkey. I love, by the way, the left. Their favorite thing is to post something like this. We had a deal with Iran. We had inspectors. We had, it was all, and Trump blew it all up. Biggest fumble in the history of the world, that kind of thing. And I have a question. Does anybody actually believe that the Obama deal was getting anything done? What inspectors? Who was going and checking on the centrifuges? I mean, our CIA knew, and the Mossad knew more about what was going on in those vaults than any UN inspector. Shades of Hans Blix. Iraq and all that. These UN inspectors is nothing. We folded. We gave them billions. John Kerry is personally responsible of orchestrating the deal that funded October 7th. There's a clean line, direct line, causal, link to the money that Obama gave to Iran, to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the funding of terror of Hamas and Hezbollah that led to the October 7th. So, this is, anyway, but nonetheless, the man has no shame, pops up to give opinions like this.
Netanyahu was taken into the situation where he basically pitched Trump on attacking Iran. Were you ever part of any conversations like that? I know he's made that pitches to past administrations. Were you ever a part of that? And were you surprised that he was able to convince Trump to do this?
Well, I was part of any number of conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, conversations that took place in other countries.
Pitching the U.S. to strike Iran.
Yes, he wanted us to strike. He came to President Obama. He made a presentation to ask to strike. President Obama refused. President Biden refused. President Bush refused. The only president who has agreed to this, obviously, is President Trump.
Now, Kerry says here, he lists the presidents that were influenced by Bibi Netanyahu, who were, I guess, lobbied by Benjamin Netanyahu to bomb Iran. He lists Obama, he lists Bush, he lists Biden. And he's deliberately putting Bush in there, I think, because he wants to show, even Republicans, decided not to listen to the madman. And it was funny because Ari Fleischer immediately reacted to this saying, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Bibi wasn't prime minister when Bush was in office. It was Ariel Sharon and Ehud Olmert. By the way, Olmert's, interesting cat. I had an opportunity to meet him in Prague about 2 years ago. Anyway, they're just making stuff up. Even these accusations that it happened under Obama. Again, Obama and this Kerry guy responsible for handing billions back to Iran, which they used to kill people with. All right, Israelis, Americans, other nationalities, plenty have suffered because of their weakness. So this weakness here, it's a different situation, right? The Trump people Trump is not backing down. And so what's interesting is this threat of the embargo, the idea that Trump is going to, via the U.S. Navy, that we're going to free up the Strait of Hormuz. And apparently the implementation, there's a blockade threatened of maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports. And it's beginning, it's happening now. Right, it's started this morning, and it's not gonna. I guess it's not gonna affect vessels that are transiting the Strait of Hormuz to or from non-Iranian ports. So this is really a blockade of Iran, and Iran goes, oh, you guys, gas prices are going to go up. No, I wouldn't be so certain of this. I think this is a death knell for the regime. It's a starvation of the Iranian regime. It means they won't be able to get trade. They won't be able to keep their country afloat. They won't be able to obtain missiles from China. They already don't have any airspace control. So choking them off from the sea, I think, is the next vital critical step. So don't think of this just regarding oil. Now, something came from a non-affiliated party. This is Singapore. Their foreign minister was answering questions about this. He gave some interesting remarks. He talked about the Strait of Hormuz, how it's basically 21 nautical miles, and the narrowest point there, about 21 nautical miles. And he talks about the Strait of Singapore, how the Strait of Singapore is less than 2 nautical miles. And that, he talks about, he was getting into international law, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, that it's a constitution of the oceans, and it's a right, it's a freedom of navigation. It's not a privilege that can be set by a certain country. Giving his own country as an example, only 2 nautical miles. I mean, Singapore could pick and choose who goes through there, but they're obligated not to play that game. And he added this, and this was again in a session of Parliament in Singapore, giving an update on this, and this is really a sober assessment of the thin ice that the Iranians are on.
Yes, I have engaged with the Iranian foreign minister before the war. And yes, I'm sure I will engage him in the near future. But as a matter of principle, and not because we're taking sides, I cannot engage in negotiations for safe passage of ships or negotiate on toll rates, because to do so would be implicitly eroding this legal principle. So again, this is another example of Singapore upholding principle, not taking sides.
Well, it's almost more insulting to Iran to put it in those terms, right? We don't dislike you. We're not even taking a side. We don't, nothing personal, but you're just objectively wrong. That's what he means by saying it's principle, not sides. They're telling Iran they're objectively not in the right. And that's the state of things right now, isn't it? Iran's decided to allegedly set mines through a waterway that is regulated by UN charter. And okay, can I just take what's the logical thing you think about next when you hear something like that? Assuming they really did mine it, maybe it's just an empty threat. If they did it in violation of UN principles, of UN Constitution of the Seas, if they did that, are you really telling me that they were in complete and total compliance with the Obama nuclear deal? That they weren't building a nuke because they pinky promised they wouldn't? What level of demented are people that think this? Right? The very same people that are like, see, no, look what Trump did. They mined the Strait of Hormuz. Don't look at me. Don't look at a Democrat. Don't look at anybody. Listen to Singapore, who doesn't have a, really it's not affiliated. But they're a common sense country, and they go, listen, we have sea access. We have a narrow strait. We don't, we believe in open access to the seas and open trade. And the Iranians are pirates, criminals and thugs. And this is why a country like Singapore won't negotiate with them. They won't pay the money because it erodes, exactly how he said, it erodes the fundamental principle of it. Okay? So that's where we're at with this. And so I remain optimistic. I mean, I always thought that there was going to be a next phase of this war. And that's that. By the way, under UNCLOS or UNCLOS, adopted 1982 and enforced since 1994, you can charge tolls for man-made canals, which makes sense. You build a canal, you can charge a toll. You cannot for natural straits and the like. So, so there it is. And whatever. Anyway, by the way, quickly, can we talk about Swalwell before we get out of here? Swalwell. Well, he's got no donors. He's going to maybe drop out, or he's already announced that he's dropped out. Poor guy. He's hunkered down somewhere. He's in a real pickle. I don't think he can withdraw his name from the ballot, Robbie. My understanding in California is that the name is going to be on the ballot. And the other part of this that I'm going to say is these are still just accusations. I mentioned this last week too. Some of you emailed me and said, "Wait, this is despicable the way you're standing up for Swalwell." I'm not. Swalwell deserves all of this and then some. What's that funny expression? Hoist by your own petard. Well, that just means that you've basically created the conditions of your own demise, and that's true for every Democrat that gets canceled like this. The Democrats built cancel culture. And by the way, some of us on our side sort of went along with it. All you have to do is name somebody and declare them a racist or declare them an abuser of women. And they're done. Right? Believe all women, believe all accusers. You just say something and it sticks. It was a few weeks ago only that we were canceling Cesar Chavez. It wasn't as sticky because he's dead. Right here in Las Vegas, where I am from, they have some park named after Cesar Chavez. You got Tick Segerblum running around, that old pot-smoking hippie. But unfortunately has a bit of power as a county commissioner in Clark County. Yeah, he's running around. Well, we're going to change the name of this park. Just call it Harry Reid. I know what Tick wants to do. I want to name everything Harry Reid, like the airport. What's good? Yeah, they're going to find out that Harry Reid, had a sex dungeon. Probably not. He was a Mormon guy. But, I don't know. They're going to find a way to cancel him too. But my point is, yes, I'm enjoying the schadenfreude of the fact that, Yeah, delighting in the misery of Eric Swalwell because he's a horrible, despicable douche. But the principle of it still stands, and I don't like that this is being used against him. And the question is, of course, why him and why now? Well, I've watched House of Cards, so I think my next logical question is, who's benefiting from it? And it seems that Tom Steyer is benefiting from it. And Steyer's a rich guy. He's connected, and he is terrible. And if he ends up on the ballot, because remember, this is a jungle primary, open primary, could be two top Republicans. That's where it was headed, potentially. But if it's Steyer versus a Republican, if Steyer and the Democratic California will win, and if Steyer wins, y'all going to wish Gavin Newsom was back in the saddle. Yeah, Steyer is that bad. So this is a torpedo. This is an internecine Democrat battle. Sitting over here enjoying my popcorn. All right, Sam Rajovsky, over and out. Be back mañana, Tuesday, with more updates on everything going on in the world. Stay safe out there, folks.